The first rays of sunlight slipped quietly through the thin curtains, painting soft golden lines across the bedroom floor. The room was simple but warm, filled with the familiar comfort of everyday life. A wooden desk stood near the window with a half-finished notebook resting on it, while a steaming mug from the previous night still sat untouched beside a stack of books. Outside, birds sang from the branches of an old mango tree, welcoming another ordinary yet unpredictable day. Daniel slowly opened his eyes as the alarm clock buzzed for the third time. He reached across the bedside table, silenced it, and stared at the ceiling for a few moments. Every morning began the same way, yet each one carried the possibility of something different. That thought alone was enough to make him smile. He stretched lazily before getting out of bed and walking toward the window. The neighborhood was already awake. Children wearing school uniforms hurried along the narrow streets, holding their parents' hands while trying not to spill their breakfast drinks. Shopkeepers unlocked metal shutters, bicycles rolled past with the familiar ringing of bells, and an elderly man swept fallen leaves from the sidewalk with patient determination. Daniel breathed deeply. The cool morning air carried the scent of wet grass mixed with freshly baked bread from the bakery at the corner. It reminded him of his childhood, when his grandmother would wake before sunrise to prepare breakfast while telling stories about hard work and kindness. He made his bed carefully, believing that small habits created disciplined lives. After brushing his teeth and washing his face, he walked into the tiny kitchen where he prepared scrambled eggs, toasted bread, and a cup of black coffee. The sizzling sound from the frying pan filled the apartment with warmth, and soon the smell of butter drifted into every corner. Instead of rushing through breakfast, Daniel sat quietly at the table. He opened his notebook and wrote 3 goals for the day: finish an important report, call his parents, and spend 30 minutes reading before bed. The list was short, but he believed meaningful progress came from consistency rather than ambition alone. By 7:30, he stepped outside carrying a backpack that looked older than it really was. The apartment building stood in a lively neighborhood where everyone seemed to know one another. Mrs. Wilson from the second floor was watering flowers on her balcony. "Good morning, Daniel," she called. "Morning! Your roses look even better today." "They're finally blooming after weeks of care," she replied proudly. He continued walking, greeting familiar faces along the way. The newspaper vendor nodded without saying a word, while a young musician tuned his guitar near the bus stop, preparing to perform for commuters. A stray dog wagged its tail as Daniel scratched behind its ears before moving on. The city gradually transformed as the sun climbed higher. Cafes opened their doors, buses became crowded, and office workers filled the sidewalks with purposeful energy. Everyone seemed to be chasing something: success, stability, happiness, or simply another paycheck. Daniel boarded the morning train and found a seat near the window. Watching the scenery pass by had become one of his favorite rituals. Brick buildings gave way to parks, then factories, then modern glass towers reflecting the sunlight like mirrors. Every station introduced new passengers with their own silent stories. Across from him sat an elderly woman knitting a blue scarf. Beside her, a teenager studied mathematics while quietly listening to music. A businessman rehearsed a presentation under his breath, unaware that several people could hear every word. The train suddenly stopped between stations because of a signal delay. Some passengers sighed impatiently, while others checked their watches repeatedly. Daniel simply leaned back and observed the changing expressions around him. Delays, he thought, revealed more about people than punctual arrivals ever could. When the train finally reached downtown, the crowd poured onto the platform like water escaping a dam. Daniel followed the flow until he reached his office building, a modern structure surrounded by carefully trimmed trees and polished stone pathways. Inside, the receptionist greeted him warmly. "You're early again. I like having a few quiet minutes before everyone arrives." He rode the elevator to the 7th floor, where rows of desks stretched across an open workspace filled with computer monitors and potted plants. His coworkers trickled in one by one, carrying coffee cups and exchanging casual greetings. Emma arrived balancing 2 cups. "I guessed you forgot to buy coffee." "You guessed correctly." She handed him one and laughed. "That's why we make a good team." Their conversation drifted naturally from weekend plans to project deadlines before the manager called everyone into the conference room for the morning meeting. Charts appeared on a large screen, while discussions moved from budgets to timelines. Although the meeting lasted only 30 minutes, it set the tone for the rest of the day. Back at his desk, Daniel immersed himself in spreadsheets and reports. Hours passed almost unnoticed until sunlight shifted across the office floor. At noon, several co-workers invited him to lunch at a nearby cafe. The streets outside buzzed with activity. Food stalls released tempting aromas of grilled meat, fresh vegetables, and spices into the warm air. Street performers entertained passing crowds, while office workers searched for quick meals before returning to their desks. As Daniel sat with friends sharing sandwiches and stories, he realized something important. Happiness rarely arrived through extraordinary events. More often, it appeared quietly in conversations, familiar routines, unexpected laughter, and the simple comfort of belonging somewhere. He looked around the table and wondered how many ordinary mornings had led each person to this exact moment. Every smile represented years of experiences invisible to everyone else. When lunch ended, he took a different route back to the office, passing through a small park where children chased pigeons across open grass. An artist painted the fountain from a shaded bench, capturing reflections that disappeared every time the wind disturbed the water. Daniel paused for just a minute. Life moved quickly, but moments like these reminded him that slowing down could reveal beauty hidden in plain sight. The world did not become extraordinary overnight. It had always been extraordinary. People simply forgot to notice. With renewed focus, he returned to work, unaware that before the day ended, a single unexpected phone call would begin changing everything he thought he knew about his future.